I am super stoked to be here with Dan Alexander to learn about native seed starting, something that I am quite passionate about, and I'm just happy to learn more and more. The outline is will be available on the Sloat website. Aside from that, why don't you take it away, Dan?
Thanks very much, Kalia. Welcome, everybody. We're going to talk about starting native plants from seed today. I first started this presentation for the Contra Costa County Public Library when it opened its seed bank a few years ago. And they wanted a little presentation on how people might start those seeds that they were going to be able to get at the library. And I hope that system is still got a good seed bank going. We have a good one over here in Marin as well. You can go to the public library and get some seeds. Vegetable seeds are often available, and some flowers as well. So we're going to focus, since this is Native Plant Week in California, we're going to focus on some wildflowers, which are always popular to put in pots or put in the ground. And we're also going to talk about a few shrubs and trees. And I'm going to give you a little bit of detail on how to get milkweed going because it's become so popular. And it fits right in with a presentation that's going to come up in, I believe, 2 weeks. The Xerxes Society is going to be here. If you're familiar with them, they're a nonprofit that advocates for pollinators, and in particular monarch butterflies. And so we'll talk about milkweeds and how to get them started in your garden in a little more detail. I like to start out by just showing a few charismatic flowers just to get us going. I hope everyone knows the California poppy, our state flower. These come in several varieties. The one you're looking at is probably a cross between the big orange Antelope Valley poppy and the more yellowish orange coastal form of the poppy. The Antelope Valley one has been so widely dispersed, even as they were given away free at gas stations all across the country at one point, so that people could plant them. And I've even heard that airplanes broadcast the seed over wide swaths of the nation. So the Antelope Valley form is everywhere and is crossed with the coastal form. So it's a little hard to find the coastal form sometimes, but they all look pretty much like this. And we always get people coming in the late spring, early summer saying, oh, the poppies are all blooming and I would love to get some poppies. And we unfortunately have to tell them that it's very difficult to get poppies going at that time. You really need to get them going in the fall, which is when they naturally start growing. And then they send roots down and can take advantage of the water. And then you can have lots of poppies growing if you start them at the right time. But by the time you see them on the dry hillsides still blooming, it's too late to get them going. This is the California buttercup, which we see every spring, or some ranunculus. And this flower makes it look huge, but it's actually quite small. It's about an inch or an inch and a quarter in diameter. Various kinds of lupins are fun to grow. This is sky lupin, which you see in the hillsides all over the Bay Area in the early spring usually. And purple Chinese houses, I think they're named like that because they look kind of pagoda-like, I think, maybe. So somebody called them that. But they're a beautiful little annual flower that's very easy to grow in the garden, and the pollinators like them. And then when we get into June, the Clarkias start blooming, and this is one form of Clarkia. They're called farewell to spring because when you see them blooming, you know that it's the end of spring and the beginning of summer. That's what they do. But they're lovely, and there are several forms. This is another Clarkia called red ribbons, Clarkia consina, which is very common all over the Bay Area as well, and very subtle, lovely little flower. Red maids are a calendrinia. Calendrinias are really a succulent, and these can grow in very dry areas once they're established and have these just pulsating, fiery purple flowers that knock you over when you see them. And they come up on kind of a long stalk and open up one at a time, so they keep blooming for a long time. Baby blue eyes are just sort of knock you over with their kind of innocent look. The bees love them. And again, they're an annual, very easy to get growing and bloom for a little bit of an extended period. Most of these have a definite season and they come and go relatively rapidly. But if you plant a mix of them, you'll get a longer blooming period. These are cream cups. These like a little more moisture than some of the others, but are, again, easy to grow and just absolutely spectacular. And a relative of baby blue eyes, 5-spot, same shaped flower, just a different kind of coloring. But you can see why they're called 5-spot. There's a purple spot on each of the 5 petals, and they just come out and look really happy in the garden. So those are a few of the kind of what I call charismatic wildflowers that are really easy to grow. Since it's Native Plant Week, we need to talk about why we grow native plants. If any of you have been lucky enough to hear Doug Tallamy speak or read any of his books, you know that in order for birds to support their babies, they need lots of insects to feed them. Even if the babies are going to grow up to be seed eaters when they're adults, they're fed insects when they're young. And plants are just about the only kind of organism that can turn sunlight into energy using photosynthesis through their green leaves. But insects are the part of the food chain that turn those plants into what is essentially meat, concentrating the proteins and the fats and the carbohydrates into a package that is just bursting with energy. And that's basically what the parent birds feed the baby birds, especially caterpillars in the springtime. So we want to grow plants in our gardens that can support the natural kinds of insects and therefore birds that have have co-evolved with the native plants. And co-evolving means they evolved together, but that also means that the timing evolved. So when the plant comes out, there'll be a certain insect that's ready to emerge and chew on it a little bit, maybe turn into another form of the same insect, and there'll be a bird that has learned, or evolutionarily has learned, that that source of food is going to be available for its babies, so it has laid the eggs and arranged to have the babies hatch at a time when that piece of food is available for them. So by growing more native plants, and the research is showing that even 30% of a garden with native plants makes a huge difference for the native wildlife. So if we all try to put a few more native plants in the garden to increase the percentage of natives over imported plants, we'll be helping the food chain. We have to change our aesthetic a little bit so that we appreciate when a leaf gets eaten by something. Instead of thinking, oh my God, I have to kill that thing, we have to get ourselves into the frame of mind that says, oh my God, I've done it. I've given a food source to something that's eating the plant, and that means something else is going to eat that food source, and away we go. So that's the preaching for today about native plants. Uh, I encourage you to look into your local chapter of the California Native Plant Society, uh, very active in Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo, Contra Costa, Alameda. And go to the websites and join if you feel like it. Lots of good information and a worthy organization. Uh, this slide is basically some resources that you might want to take a picture of or a screenshot of, or go back to later when it's posted on YouTube, or it'll also be available through the Sloat website. Under the Learn tab, you go to the webinars, and they're all there. But this is just some resources that I've found very helpful. Larner's Seeds, which is over in Bolinas, is a wonderful source of native flower and shrub and tree seeds. Very seasonal, so you have to kind of keep going back to it and finding out what they have available at a certain time. They go out and very carefully and in a environmentally friendly way harvest seeds out in the world, and then clean them up and package them up and have them ready for sale. But they run out regularly of a given kind of seed. And so some patience and persistence is necessary to get what you want. They also, interestingly, have some native bulbs. So if you're interested in, ethereal spear or brodias, they have them early in the season, but they run out very quickly. Calscape, www.calscape.org, is a wonderful resource to figure out what native plants grow in your neighborhood, or would have grown in your neighborhood if we hadn't scraped all the neighborhoods and brought in trees from other places. So go to that, and you can just put your zip code in or whatever, and it'll give you a list of native plants that are appropriate. I have a 3 apps on my phone that I find very helpful. There's one is called North California Wildflowers. It's a kind of typical picture-oriented identification app where you put in different parameters. Is it a wildflower or a tree? Is it grow in the mountains or in a meadow? That sort of thing. And it'll help you identify a plant. Picture This is one of those where you take a picture and it sends it to the web and purports to identify the plant. And it can be helpful. Don't take what they tell you as gospel. It's often wrong, but it will probably get you at least to the family or the genus, if not the exact species. And Seek, which is part of iNaturalist, is a video version of Picture This, where you video the plant from different angles, and then it tries to identify it. And it's pretty darn good. And at least it'll tell you if it can't get to the species level. It'll say, oh, we've got to the family, that's as close as we can get, or the genus, and that's helpful. And then the Homegrown National Park.org is Doug Tallamy's effort to link together people who are interested in growing native plants in their particular locale. And the concept is that among us all in our gardens, even devoting a small amount to native plants, we can together make the equivalent of a national park for native plants. And it's kind of a neat abstraction and fun. I put my particular piece of ground on the map, so I'm part of the national park now, and that's kind of fun to know that you're doing that. Sloatgardens.com, I hope you're all familiar with. And if you want to really dive deeply into how to treat native seeds that need special ways of propagation, Dara Emery's Seed Propagation of Native California Plants is from the Santa Barbara Botanical Garden. I think there's a second edition now that doesn't add too much, but maybe updates some of the names of the plants. But Dara was the chief propagator at the Santa Barbara Botanical Garden, and this book collects together research from years and years and years for as many native plants as you can possibly think of. And it should be available in your public library. It's great to look at if you want to do some of the more difficult plants to propagate. Now, let's get into propagating, starting seeds. These are what I call the tools of the trade. Well, seeds you got to have. You got to have something to grow them in. And interestingly enough, you're best off with something that's relatively sterile. You don't want a rich, manure-y, composty kind of starting medium most of the time, because that will also be a place where lots and lots of fungi and bacteria are growing and are just dying to get at those little seedlings when they start. And you have what we call damping off sometimes, where a whole bunch of seedlings will just suddenly collapse and die. And that's usually because there's a fungus or bacteria that has gotten at them, and boom, down they go. So a relatively sterile medium like half and half coir or peat moss with some kind of rocky material like perlite is a good starting medium for things, because it's quite sterile, and probably you're not going to have much problem with damping off. Small pots are good to have, or 6-packs that you've kept from when you've purchased your marigolds or whatever. Keep the 6-packs and use those for starting seeds. You can use if you have an old muffin tin with maybe 8 holes in it for the muffins, you can just drill holes in the bottom of them so they drain and use those. Lots of ways to do it. You'll need some water. And I'm going to talk about starting things indoors, and I'll explain why. But a sunny spot, a sunny window, or a grow light is really helpful for getting seeds to go indoors. If you get them started without enough light, they'll just get real tall and rangy and weak. And so you need bright light for them to grow in for a little while until you take them outside. Seeds are literally baby plants. They have an embryo inside them. And if you take a large seed like an avocado or even a bean, sometimes you can see the little, if you split it in half, you can see the little outline of the leaf right in the middle of the seed, and it's really interesting. I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately. I'll try to get one for the next time. But it's an embryonic plant, and all the cells are there ready to go when the conditions are right for the seed to grow. The root, called a radicle, is usually the first thing that grows out of the seed, and so it wants to get in the ground and start absorbing moisture and nutrients right away. And then the starter leaves, the cotyledons, store food. The bean is a great example, and we're going to give some more detail about that. But the halves of the bean are actually the cotyledons. And the reason that beans are so good for us to eat and have so much protein and fat and carbohydrate in them is that that's all stored there for the bean plant to get started. It'll use up all that energy that's stored in the halves of the bean, which are the cotyledons. So I'm gonna show you a little seed sprouting technique here using a bean sprout, where we're gonna put some beans in a moist paper towel. We're gonna put that in a Ziploc bag and we're gonna stick it up on top of the refrigerator. The reason being that the top of the refrigerator is usually a few degrees warmer than the rest of your house, because refrigerators take the heat out of the inside and expel it outside, and that's the way they get the inside cold. But as a result, they make the area around the refrigerator a little warmer, and that's just a perfect environment for starting lots of different kinds of seeds. So these are scarlet runner bean seeds that I collected at some point in my life, and they're beautiful and tasty and all that, and they also grow very vigorously. So here I've put them in a moist paper towel, folded over on top of them, and I stick the paper towel into the Ziploc bag, leaving about an inch of the zipper open so that air can circulate. And you'll see I have carefully recorded the date and what's in there so that I know. And I stuck it on top of the refrigerator. And within a week, the beans have started to sprout. And the little white thing up here is a little bit of root starting to come out, and there's a little bit more here and here. And within a short time, you can really see that the roots are extending. They're even starting to branch out. You can see here branching. And in a little more time, they have not only made a vigorous root system, but now we're starting to see the green part of the bean emerge as well. And of course, all of this down here would be going on underground if it wasn't happening in a paper towel. And then again, the first true leaves of the bean are up here, and the bean seed is actually the cotyledons, and they are here, and the plant is absorbing the energy out of the cotyledons to do all of this growing. Nope, I'm stuck. Just a minute. All right. I don't know why this happens, but occasionally we get stuck here. So I'm going to go over and navigate out of this. All right. At this point, we're still in the paper towel, and we've got real leaves opening up, and you can see the seed is self-sufficient for quite a length of time. It's going to run out of energy pretty soon unless it gets out in some sunlight and can start making food. And it wouldn't be able to absorb enough moisture unless it has the ability to grow more roots than it can in a paper towel. So this is about as far as one can get. But this technique works for a great number of seeds and is especially good for larger seeds. You could start lupins, anything in the bean or pea family will have large enough seeds to do it this way. And even smaller seeds will sprout, but you may need a pair of tweezers to move them around. My fingers don't do very well in anything smaller than about a pea. Now, having seen that the things are relatively easy to sprout, one of the really simple ways to do the sprouting is with something like this Jiffy greenhouse. This is like a package that's all ready for you to sprout seeds with. And this is what it looks like when it's been opened up. And let me maybe make it a little bigger. What it is a bunch of little peat pots in a tray that has little places for each peat pot, and it has a plastic dome over it to keep the humidity in. And so you just add some water, and the peat pots absorb the water. And there they are. They kind of float around for a little while, and then they expand, and they have a little netting around them to keep them from falling apart. But once they're fully expanded, they look like this. And then you take, this is a twig here or a toothpick or something like that, and kind of, I like to scratch up the peat here and open up the bag a little bit so that there's more room to deal with the soil. And so here they are. They look like little garbage bags, don't they, with soil in them. And that's a bit essentially what they are, little bags with a little bit of peat in them. And then you choose some seeds. This is Botanical Interests California Color Mix. And it's quite a nifty little mix that hopefully you can find easily. This is the giant sized package. There's usually a smaller package also at about half the price, which might be plenty for most people. It's nice of them. They list on the back all the different seeds that are in here, and you can see it ranges from about 18% Arroyo Lupin to just 1% Palmer's Penstemon. So you're likely to get quite a bit of lupin and some 5-spot and some baby blue eyes, and not so much Globegilia or Penstemon, because you'd have to be lucky to have them all germinate. Now, you might see this little warning here, when to start inside, not recommended. Well, I'm recommending it. And the reason is an easy one. This is what the seeds look like. If you just scatter these seeds out in your garden, the chances are you're going to get nothing in return. Between the birds and the rodents and just environmental factors, the chances are that you're not going to get any production. Now, I'm going to contradict that a little bit later here and say, if you want to start it directly in the garden, you can do that, and here's how. But you're going to have better success if you start them under controlled conditions, which usually means inside, and get them going a little bit and then transplant them. So that's what we're going to show how to do right now. And you can see the seed mix here. You've got everything from these great big lupin seeds to these are something from these guys that look like little rockets. Are they always come out of Compositae, which are sunflower family seeds, and I don't know exactly what this is, but then these little black guys are probably California poppies, and then there are Gilia, and there are 5-spot in here, all kinds of different sizes, shapes, and we are going to use these, here they are again, use them to get started in these little peat pots. So we just take a pinch of seeds randomly, and here, we have a different mixture now in each of these little peat pots of the California flowers, and we mark them. You'll see 1021. That wasn't this year because it hasn't come up yet. This was, I think, 2 years ago, actually, that these pictures are from. And in a very short time, here they come. They're starting to sprout, and they need more light. They're a little bit leggy there in that picture. And so we take them outside. This is 5 days after they've sprouted. And we've got them outside, and we're taking the top off to give them plenty of air, and so they don't stay too soggy. But bingo, we've got wildflowers growing. And very shortly after they've been growing for a little while, we need to get them into something bigger. This is a coir pot. very handy, very rigid when you first get them, when they're dry. But after they've been wet for a while, they soften right up and the plant's roots can grow right through them, just as they do with this little peat pot. And that's very handy because you don't have to take them out of the pot then to transplant them again. You just let them grow right through the pot into the new one, and you don't do any damage to the roots. So here we are transplanting the little peat pot right over here. You can see I've taken off the netting because there's no need to keep that. It's going to sit in the coir pot at just high enough so that we can water it easily. And then we fill up around with the potting soil. And here we use real potting soil, a good quality potting soil. And it's easy to water these from the bottom. You just stick them in a half an inch of water and it'll absorb it, and the potting soil will absorb it. And that way you don't have to worry about washing the soil and the little plants out of the pot by watering from the top. And here they are, maybe an hour later, pretty much absorbing the moisture. And here they've been joined by some of their square friends. We have the round friends and the square friends. The square friends are cow pots, which are made of cow poop, and which I think is a wonderful use for what comes out of the cows. It's sterile and but it works the same way. And when it's wet, it's quite soft, and the roots can grow right through the cow pots, just as they do with the coir. So I think those are both more environmentally friendly probably than peat pots, although there's a lot of discussion about the environmental aspects of getting peat, which we're not going to go into right now. Here are the coir pots, and you can see how they soften up and aren't the rigid pots that they were originally. Once they're wet, they kind of lose their some of their consistency, and they don't fall apart, but they do make themselves easy for the roots to go through. And they grow and grow. And then we're going to come back to these after they've grown up a little bit more, but we're going to segue here into starting some seeds right in the ground. So I chose this pollinator seed mix from Larner's. And it was put together with the Xerces Society. You can see they advertise that here. And this is the seed mix on top of a couple of handfuls of potting soil in the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket. That's what you're looking at. And the reason for that is to mix the seeds with a little bit of potting soil so that it's easier to broadcast them rather than just tossing the little light seeds out. Mix them with something so that you can throw a handful and not throw the whole batch of seeds in one handful. And then we scraped up a little area here in the ground and gotten rid of most of the weeds. I'm going to leave these ferns growing here, and this is some California fuchsia, some more ferns and fuchsia. And we just kind of scratched this up, got rid of the weeds, and maybe put a little bit of compost in. And then we'll broadcast the seeds in there, and we'll come back to this because now we're going to look at the roots growing through the cow pot. Here's the first root emerging. And here's the size of the plants at this point. They're still tiny, but they're growing rapidly. And here's the coir pot and the first root coming through the coir pot. So we're going to move them into something a little bigger. This is what the nurseries call a 1-gallon can. It's about 6 inches in diameter, about twice the size and diameter of the coir pot, which is just about perfect for transplanting. You generally want to go about twice the diameter for the next size pot, not much bigger than that, or things will stay too wet. So here it is. It's sitting on a base of potting soil, and we're going to fill up around it. You can see the outline. The pot's still there, but it's just barely covered with a little bit of potting soil. And away we go. Now, the outline says, I think, something like, hey, grasses are wildflowers too. And so we want to give a shout out for native grasses. This is a purple needlegrass, which is our state grass, believe it or not. And this is growing out in the wild, and it's summertime, so it's gotten a little bit dormant from the drought. It's called drought dormancy. They can send roots down 8 to 10 feet, so they're not going to die, but they'll go quiet. The needles are actually a combination of the kind of, they're not sharp so that they would hurt you, but the leaves are very pointed, kind of pretty, but the flowers have awns on them, which are what carry the seeds, and they look kind of needly, but again, they don't hurt you at all. Purple needlegrass, very widely distributed in California. This is deer grass growing in the garden, very close to where we're planting those seeds that we were just looking at. And deer grass is called deer grass not because the deer eat it, because they don't. They don't really eat any grass. They eat leaves, but they like to lay in it. It can get very big, and it can hide them and be a place where they can chew their cud for a while. California fescues are very attractive grasses, again, very deeply rooted, and grow very easily in the garden. And all these grasses are very easy to start from seed. You don't need to do any treatment of the seed, but I would, again, recommend you start them separately. You can do it outside, but start them in a pot or a 6-pack, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to see the grass you're trying to grow and separate it out from the wild, unnative grasses that dominate our landscapes. Okay, now we're back to the Xerces Society mix, and it's starting to come up. Very tiny, but we can see here these are probably mostly Clarkias coming up here. This is a California poppy. I don't see any lupin yet, but it'll be coming. And let's see. Oh, here it comes. This is the way lupin looks when it first starts up. It's got fused cotyledon leaves that make this circular kind of structure. And then the fingery lupin leaves grow up out of it. And we can see our poppies here. Poppies have these very distinctive cotyledon leaves that come up, and they look very different from the leaves of the mature poppy plant. And here we are a couple of weeks later with the lupin. Here's that circular lupin cotyledon leaf that we were looking at, and here are the fingery lupin leaves coming up out of it. We have some Phacelia growing here, and let's see, what else do we see? Poppy up here. I can't really make out much else, but they are certainly growing. And these, again, these were sown. Oh, here's a Clarkia up here. These were sown directly in the ground, and they're doing fine. I will report that a little later on, the deer came by and mowed down most of it. So again, if you're going to start them out in the wild, you either take your chances that they're going to get eaten by something, or you protect them in some way. I could have put bird netting or something like that over them, and that would keep the deer off of them, but I decided just to let them go. The deer will eat anything that's, they can reach up about 7 feet on their hind legs, and they love to browse on leaves, and the baby deer will try absolutely everything. And so even if the book says it's deer resistant, it won't be to the babies until they learn what tastes good and what doesn't, or what's nutritious and what isn't. So just expect that things are going to get chewed on. Now we're back to our original project. These are some of the coir pots that we've planted in a big terracotta pot. And the idea here is, okay, I've got a deck or a patio, and I'd like to have a pot of native pollinator plants. And this is a way to do it. You get them started, you stick them in the pot. Maybe you put some deer netting over them if you've or bird netting if you've got it, just to protect them. And bingo, in a couple of months, this is about 2 months later, January, you've got some nice guys growing that are going to give you some flowers starting in about March. That's when most of the wildflowers start blooming. So it can be quite a successful project, and even a very tiny deck garden can allow you to participate in growing some native plants from seed. This is a California poppy in the wild. This is one that was actually, I think it succumbed last year, but I followed this one for several years, growing on a little cut bank by the road, and it would come back each year. And I'm quite sure it was a perennial form that returned. They're capable of having a big kind of carrot-like root and coming back year after year, but some of them are just annual, and you can't really tell whether you're going to have an annual or a perennial, although the coastal form tends to be more perennial and come back year after year. But what we're looking at here is the shape of the leaves and the color of the leaves. You can see the blue-green color and the multiple branching of the leaves. And the reason we're studying that right now is we're going to look for it among the seedlings that have come up. And the question is, do we see a poppy? And the answer is yes. These were actually the cotyledon leaves, which don't look really anything like a poppy. But here come the true leaves right here. And I'll see if I can make it a little bigger. And here they are, very distinctive, have that blue-green look to them. And so you want to get so that you can distinguish the plants that you're trying to grow from the plants that are inevitably going to grow up around them, the weeds, if you will. And Lord knows we have a lot of those that grow each year in all of our gardens. And so sometimes it's difficult to figure out, wow, which ones are the keepers, and slowly over time you can get to recognize them. Now, we're going to talk about the California buckeye, which is one of my favorite trees. I have an area that I'm trying to sort of rewild. My whole neighborhood was oak woodland, and I'm lucky enough to have some big oak trees. But there weren't any native plants in the areas that weren't covered by oak trees. And so I'm trying to get some buckeyes and some toyon and madrone and coffeeberry going in some of those areas. And I find that buckeyes are a lot of fun to grow, and they'd be a great project to do with kids. The buckeye seeds are hanging on the trees now. You may notice that the tree looks dead. It has, even though it's summertime and most trees that lose their leaves are still green, the buckeyes have gone dormant because they're what's called drought dormant. And by about August, they are starting to turn brown and lose their leaves. They've already flowered. They've have long flowering stalks that usually end up having one or at most two of the big seeds at the end of the flowering stalk. And so in October, we see these seeds that are the largest seed of any California native plant. I'm wiggling around here, sorry. And they're in a husk or shell. And then there's a beautiful big mahogany colored chestnut-like seed inside there. And this is the husk next to a quarter, so you can see how big it is. They aren't quite ripe yet, so I picked this one even though it isn't ripe. When they're ripe, the husk starts, it opens up, it'll crack, and you'll see the brown nut inside. And then under the buckeye trees, you'll see a lot of them fall on the ground. And I don't like to pick them out in the mountains, but in town where there's no place for a new one to grow, I don't mind picking a few up off the ground and taking them home with me. This is the size and the shape, but not the color of the nut. This is the nut out of that husk we were just looking at, but it's not mature yet, so it's not the beautiful brown color yet. It's still white, and it undoubtedly wouldn't grow, although I decided to plant it since I had picked it and just see if it grows anyway. Here it is in a little pot. I don't expect it to do anything. And what you do with them is often you find them with the root already growing out on top of they just fall on the ground. And although the squirrels love them and they take them away and eat them, there are so many of them usually that they can't handle all of them. And so you find one with the root already growing out of it, and either stick it in the ground or stick it in a pot and let it grow. And pretty soon, this is about a 1-year-old tree that where I just stuck the seed in a 1-gallon can. And you can see it'll put on about 2 feet of growth in a year and be about the diameter of your little finger. So it's a substantial grower. And sometimes you find in the wild, you find little nurseries of these things, and there'll be 10 or 20 of them. And then you go back the next year and they're all gone because the deer love to eat these guys. It's very difficult to grow them out in your garden unless you protect them from the deer. This is what the brown seed coat looks like a year later. This was around the nut, if you will, and it's still there in the can, but all of the flesh of the nut has been absorbed by the plant, so it's not there anymore. This is about a 4-year-old buckeye tree out in the area that I'm trying to rewild. And you can see I've still got protection from the deer around it because it's about 6 feet tall now, and it needs to get up a couple more feet. And then I'll remove the deer fence, and the deer will chew up all of these little branches that are low enough, and it'll only be up here that it's able to continue. I may leave some fencing around the trunk so that the bucks don't destroy it with their antlers when they're rubbing the fuzz off the antlers. But otherwise, the deer will have their way with the lower branches. But they grow quite vigorously, and once they've been in the ground for a few years, they don't need any water at all. Okay, segue to milkweed, one of our favorites. People are now growing native milkweeds, I'm happy to report, rather than the tropical milkweed. Milkweed is the only food that monarch caterpillars can eat, and therefore the monarch caterpillars only lay or monarch butterflies only lay their eggs on the milkweed. We don't want to grow the tropical milkweed because of OE, a parasite that can overwinter more easily on the native milkweed since it tends to stay green all winter. The native milkweeds die down during the winter and have less of a parasite load on them. The seeds sprout best if you treat them a little bit with what's called cold, moist stratification. Even though the book says you don't have to do that, in my experience, it helps. This is the tropical milkweed, which you want to avoid. If you already have it, make sure that you cut it. If you're not willing to take it out, cut it back right down to the ground in September. And if you haven't done that, do it right now, because you don't want the parasite to keep growing over the winter. And this is too late, by the way. Any monarchs that are laying eggs on milkweed at this point are dooming their progeny, and it's too late for that. So don't feel bad about getting rid of the milkweed leaves at this point. The saying Darwin was right, meaning some things are so dumb they shouldn't evolve, is true for some monarchs. When we allow them to lay eggs too late in the season, they will do that. So we don't want to allow that. This is one of the natives that's widely available as seed, showy milkweed, Asclepias speciosa. Has a big fuzzy leaf after about the second year or so. And it helps to cold stratify these seeds before you plant them. This is a big batch of narrow leaf milkweed, which is another one available by seed pretty readily, Asclepias fasciculatus. All the milkweeds make these fuzzy things attached to the seeds that blow in the air. They're like a little kite that takes the seed far away from the mother plant. These are the seed pods. This is one that is immature and hasn't opened yet, and this one has, and you can see the brown seeds here attached to their little airplanes that are going to take them off flying. And here they are close up, the brown seeds and the little airplanes. And here we've separated the fluff from the seeds. So the seeds are ready now to be treated. And the way we treat them is we take some horticultural sand or sharp sand and put a good big handful, maybe half a cup, into a little sandwich baggie. And we put a little bit of water, about a tablespoon or maybe a little more, and make sure that the sand is just barely moist. And then put the seeds in with the sand and shake the bag around a little bit. And what that does, the sand scratches up the seed coating a little bit. And then we put the baggie, here it is, baggie with sand, and inside here's one of the seeds sitting visible. The seeds are mixed with the sand, and I've labeled it. What's the plant, and when am I putting it in the refrigerator? And then I'm putting it down in the vegetable bin with the carrots, and it's going to stay there for about 90 days. So I've marked my calendar for the middle of January, and that's when I'm going to check. And if at that point I'm going to plant it, whether they are showing signs of sprouting or not, I'm going to plant them in pots. And maybe I'm going to put them in a seed tray with a little bit of bottom heat, which will help to make them sprout a little more evenly so that I have a whole crop of them. So that's basically what I'm trying to get across to you. Native plants support biodiversity. They will help us have a more healthy ecosystem. You will probably have better results with most of the things we're talking about if you try them in pots rather than just putting them out in the garden and hoping you remember where you planted them and can distinguish them from the weeds that grow up around them. We talked about the paper towel method, which goes on the refrigerator, and you can use it with lots and lots of different, not just native seeds, but I use it for tomatoes and peppers as well. Any kind of pot you can come up with will work, but the coir pots and the cow pots and the peat pots are nice because you can transplant more easily. Patience, curiosity, observation, reading, talk to your friends, ask questions, use some of the resources, help the native birds and the insects, and join your local native plant society, and have fun mostly. I find that growing these things doesn't always work in the garden, but the process is fun. It's fun to do with kids. I've done it with my grandchildren, and it's just fun to watch the process and learn a little bit each time you do it about what works and what doesn't work. And in my experience, because it didn't work one year, doesn't mean that it won't work the next year. The weather is always different. And since these plants evolved in California weather, they have an understanding of what they need that's better than our understanding of what they need. And so we're coming at it from our point of view, which is, I want you to grow and I want you to grow here. But that's not the way they evolved. They evolved to make millions of seeds, a few of which fall into places that are the right places for them to grow. And even fewer of those end up being mature plants. And so if we have a pretty good turnout from the plants that we're growing, we're actually doing way better than nature in terms of the numbers. If my little sprinkling of seeds, if half of them grow, that's way better than Mother Nature does. So you can consider that to be a victory.
Uh, I did see a couple of questions really quick, Dan. One of which, and I'm curious about this as well. Um, how many of the California native seeds are going to flower if you were to plant them in fall? For example, like milkweed. Would you know whether or not they're going to flower next year?
Yeah, you can get real good germination from milkweed, and uh, any milkweed plant is unlikely to bloom the first year, although sometimes Asclepias fasciculatus, the narrow leaf milkweed, will flower the first year, but more likely the second year.
Hmm.
The flowers are not necessary for the monarchs, although they will nectar on the flowers. They're interested mainly in the leaves because that's what the caterpillars eat. So the monarchs are coming to the milkweed, not really to feed on the milkweed, although they will, but to let their caterpillars feed on the milkweed. So don't worry about whether you have flowers or not the first year. What you want to grow is lots of foliage, and the odds are you will have some caterpillars that will then strip the plant of the foliage, but don't worry about that because it's storing lots of energy in the stems and in the roots, and will come back the following year even stronger.
Would you say that that is true of poppies as well? Because I found in my experience with the perennial poppies that they don't always bloom in the first year.
Generally, they will bloom the first year if you get them started really early.
Okay.
The prime blooming season for the poppies is late spring into early summer. And they'll keep blooming during the summer after that. But if you see fields of poppies, it's usually in late spring. And the new ones have started in the fall. And so they've had several months to grow and get to the point where they have enough chutzpah to flower. And so usually if we grow them and they don't flower that first season, it's because we got them in too late.
Makes a lot of sense. I am seeing a couple more questions on just your recommendations for protecting the plants from rats, and then just an additional question on slopes. Any input on either of those things?
What was the second one?
Slopes, how to plant them on slopes, if possible.
On
Like planting seeds on the slope of a hill.
Oh, on slopes. Yeah. Okay. First of all, protection uh, can be if you make a little wire basket to go over it, that works really well, or a netting kind of cover. You can actually just throw I don't know if you're familiar with the white frost cloth, which is called row cover. But you can throw that right over the seedlings. It's light. It allows light and water through. It protects them from birds and most rodents. You know, some rodent may get underneath the cloth and go crazy, but it's weird enough that for them that they may not want to go under there. Um, Wire cages are good for larger plants, obviously. Um, Upside down gopher cages are pretty good, although they won't help you with a small rodent like a vole. They can go right through. So you need something finer like bird netting and make a little hoop kind of covering for the plant with the bird netting. You can also try the chemical repellents. Some of them are pepper-based, capsaicin-based, and some of them are rotten egg-based. They can be quite effective for helping the plants when they're really young so that somebody doesn't just come along and eat them. Once they're up and have a couple of weeks growth, it's the larger mammals that are the bigger problem, deer in particular. Now on slopes, again, if you're starting the plants separately, if you're not starting them in place, it's pretty easy to transplant on a slope. But I guess the problem is usually getting a source of water onto the slope that'll stay there. So planting in the fall and allowing the rainy season to water the plants for you is probably a good solution. And planting some native grasses on the slope will help to hold the slope, and it'll also the native grasses grow in kind of bunches, and around the native grasses you often find the wildflowers growing, and it's partly because the grasses are bringing up moisture and nutrients from further down below, and they're giving some protection from wind and actually even from the rain for the little forbs to grow. So getting some native grasses established on the slope can be really helpful for eventually getting some shrubs or some wildflowers going. But you can certainly, if it's a really steep slope, it's very challenging. And you probably have to get some erosion netting and get some mulch down, and then dig out little areas to get things started. Otherwise, things are just going to wash away in the rains. It's challenging.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I think we have learned a lot today. Thank you so much, Dan.